I think week 1 is important just because to see how well the split can go.
Niels jumped on by Lulex. Does he have the damage condemn against the wall? Yes, he does. Niels is unstoppable.
Origin is very well trained. Maybe they will fall off a bit. We don't know. But right now, I think Origin is the team to watch out for.
Oh. But the massive gnaw against the wall. Fnatic have just won the team fight.
I think having first win is pretty meaningful.
Just getting the first games done is like really important for me because I'm a new player in the team.
As Candy Pan is trying to reply, the magical journey will not give anyone a magical life. And Fnatic ace SK Gaming.
It's just depending on time. I don't think you can judge too much from the first week.
Ghost Pepper's gonna get a hook on Woolite, but it won't matter. Everyone from Gambit, they've backed out or died.
It will take time. I think practice is what makes teams and players good. We'll see. Time will tell.
You can slowly make yourself a picture of how LCS is going to be.
From our studio in Berlin, Germany, where the action is ramping up and our fans are awake and ready to go as they were when they were in the queue a couple of minutes ago as well. Definitely ready for all the games here today, and their Pyra is getting hooked up to be on air in just a couple of minutes. We see Giants entering the building. Their coach Lothar looking for another victory. 1-1 in week 1, not a bad result at all. Pepinero at the back, and they're the Elements, their opponents in the very first match of the day, setting up their gear on stage as we speak. I'm Evje Schok-Zaportra here to take a closer look at the summer split with the help of Challenger Series caster James Stress O'Leary, as well as our very own Mitch Krepo-Voorspoels and Trevor Quickshot Henry. We are all ready to go, but before we get to the standings, we do want to mention that Martin the Fisho Lunge won't be on the broadcast this week, and for full context, please see the official statement over on lolesports.com. For us, though, we're going to take a look at the league after week 1 and take a look at the standings coming with that. At the top of the table, Fnatic and Origen 2-0, a bunch of teams in the middle of the table, and at the bottom, SK Gaming and Gambit. And while Stress, Origen coming straight from Challenger, absolutely wrecking it in week 1.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that for Origin, they are no longer a Challenger team. They have unseated so many of the top players in Europe so far along the way. They are sitting pretty. And what a start for Origin. First week, first MVP goes to Niels, brand new player in the European LCS, and he's absolutely stomping people in the bottom lane.
Yeah, what a game on Vayne as well. Very impressive. And then another team that's at the top of the table, more expected, but maybe even doing better than we had expected. Fnatic, Krepo after MSI looking sharp.
Yeah, I think they just looked really steady. A little slower than usual, but calculated in their approach, and they didn't give away too much, if anything. And Reckless already meshing well with the team, and I think that's very important for them because that was one question mark they had, but so far looking good. And Huni with an impressive Gnar performance.
Yeah, something actually didn't have in Spring Split. I think Huni's Gnar last week really showed growth for him as a player and also for the team because they played around that, a lot more controlled, a lot more coordinated.
Yeah, definitely looking scary straight off the bat. Not looking as scary, Gambit and SK Gaming at the bottom. Of course, different circumstances for both of these teams. Trevor and both saying in the video, you can't read too much off that first week. We need time to amp up.
Yeah, they definitely do. You know, and I talked about the teams last night on PTL and said Gambit and SK, they've changed their 80 carries, but what a difference it makes to their respective teams. With Candy Panda last year, SK were a very mid to late game team. They were smart, they were rotation based. They really struggled early. And I think a little bit of those problems still shone through last week. For SK, they looked much better against Fnatic than they did against the Wolves on day 1. So I'd like to see how much they can develop in the weeks to follow and whether or not that old style of SK will still work in this new year and this new meta.
We'll see after some practice indeed. When it comes to the meta, we did see some very clear trends. Krepo, walk us through those.
Yeah, we did see that some of these champion picks were becoming quite predictable and prevalent, and we decided to track that a bit. So the initial graphic right here, you see a lot of information on your screen, but what I want you to focus on is the top picks and bans in this split. So this is the sum of the picks and bans, and Gragas and Maokai were picked or banned together with Kalista every single game. LeBlanc and Alistar almost the same. Maybe one game they weren't picked. Same for Rek'Sai and Urgot. So very, very prevalent picks, and it makes these picks and bans pretty predictable, especially on the ban side. A lot of these champions, or some of these champions rather, were banned a lot, and that's Urgot, LeBlanc, and Rek'Sai, banned in 60% of the games. 6 out of 10 games. I did the math. But the interesting trend right here is that Copenhagen Wolves banned Rek'Sai and LeBlanc twice in both, so basically in both their games. And LeBlanc first, one on blue side, one on purple side. So that will be interesting to see how that develops today. Now, the reason we actually started looking at these stats, and that's the next graphic, is Alistar. Alistar was the most prevalent support champion, and just so interesting to see how well he was doing, not only in Europe, also over in NA. And in Europe, he has a 5-in-1 win-loss ratio. That's 83% win rate. That's absolutely insane, especially with a KDA of 6.9 as a support. Really strong champion, and I would be surprised if he would even make it past the ban stage. He should be a permaban right now. And then Morgana kind of surprised me. 4-0, kind of had fallen off on the support tier, but with the opportunity to flex it into that earlier LeBlanc that we mentioned, makes it a very valuable pick and seems to be working. 4-0 for Morgana.
Yeah, it definitely worked out. Pekka's Morgana surprised me because it showed Origin at a different pick ban priority. Today we're on 5.10, so some small changes to the champion pool. I want to see whether or not EU picks up the Varus Vayne combos, because we've seen some Varus before. We've seen some Vayne play from Niels last week, and it seems to be a little more popular in the East. And I just want to see whether or not some of that playstyle gets transfused to our local teams.
Yeah, definitely love to see that combo come out. And we'll see what the teams decide to go with. And let's take a look at the matchups for today. Our very first game is Elements versus Giants. And we're going to end the day with UOL versus Copenhagen. Wolf Stress, what are you keeping an eye on?
I think for me, it's our game of the week. Game 3 for the day, it's H2K versus Gambit. That's going to be a really good game because we don't really know where Gambit are right now. They're 0-2, H2K 1-1. Only one win between those two teams, and you'd expect a lot more from them coming into the summer split.
Yeah, we'll see how they do with a week of practice under their belt. Now, the split has only just begun, but we have announced the locations for the LCS Summer Finals. We're going to be taking a road trip to the Hovet Arena in Stockholm to crown our European Summer Champion. I love me a road trip, and definitely to Stockholm. Well, the tickets will be available later this month, and for more information and all the updates you'll need, be sure to check out lolesports.com. Now, with the summer playoffs in mind, we do want to hear from you guys, so get on Twitter and tell us which role do you think will be the most impactful in the LCS Summer Split and why?
Well, I've got an opinion, and I think the role is the AD carry role, and I think I'm looking at EU a little more than NA in this regard because of the ADC shuffle that we've seen, a number of teams getting some old new faces, new old faces, as it were, and I want to see what sort of impact they're going to have throughout the coming weeks because there's so much importance on top and junglers and mid, and ADC feels a little underplayed, but I think good players are going to rise above.
I disagree there, Trevor. To make a true good AD carry shine, you need a support. You need a solid, good support. You need the young, hungry players. Now that all these washed-up old players are out, found themselves different jobs, ended up some certain desk somewhere, there's room for potential to grow, and I think support will be the role to watch.
All right, from washed-up player to washed-up commentator. No.
Brand
new, and so happy to have you. But you guys, as always, make sure you send your responses at LL Esports. Use that hashtag LCS, and we're going to talk over your thoughts here on the desk later today. For now, though, it is time for some action and diving into our first match of the day in the week between Elements and Giants Gaming. They're both coming off a 1-1 opening week. Let's start by taking a look at the lineup for Elements. They're on the blue side. JWoww, Dexter, Froggen, Tabs, Promise Q, and their coach, Nif. Now, 1-1 on the first week, a win versus Gambit, a loss versus the Unicorns of Love, and, well, doing a bit slower in the early game, in the first 15 minutes of the game, and combined to the two games, only one kill, which is kind of, even though it's mostly different members, the Alliance/Elements of old.
And I think this is going to make Nif very happy. Back in Spring Split, when we were scrimming with Nif as our coach, he kept insisting that we would stop fighting so much every damn game. It became a bloodbath and there was no objective focus. So I think he took it a little bit too far. I think Elements is playing far too passive. They could have gotten punished very hard in their game against Gambit if Diamond Prox chose to actually counter jungle Dexter. But they got away with it and it worked for them in a very big, stompy game in the late game. But I think their tendency to be slow will come back to bite them.
I think so too. And, the proof is in the pudding. You look at Elements from the last split, you look at, Alliance, as it were, previously, and the slower playstyle with these scaling comps simply got outplayed. One of the first things that we hit on at the beginning of the summer split was how effective teams that look for kills correlated to your placement on the standings, and Elements is not one of those teams. So I would like to see them going to the Bloodbath Scrim style. If, however, their opponents let them scale, then of course that's a different story. But yeah, you know, in the past it hasn't worked. So will it continue to show the same results later on?
We'll see if an adaptation comes in, and they're up against the Giants on the red side for this one with Werlip, Frederick, Pepinero, Adri, their new support Godfred, and Lothar. When we talk about well, active early games, the Giants last week, super active early game. Pre-15 minutes, they took 4 towers, and their opponents only took 1. They took 2 dragons, their opponents only took 1, but they did tend to die a lot in the process.
Yeah, that's the biggest problem here for the Giants, is that with all of the towers, all of the dragons, they gave away 9 kills in the early game before 15 minutes and only picked up 5 kills in return. 4, 5. Yeah, the
somewhere around that mark.
Yeah,
I believe it was 5, but they only picked up a handful of kills, gave away a lot to the enemies, and a team like Giants giving up that, if they do that game after game, they'll look to struggle as they continue through the season.
I'm hoping the same style works though, because I think that's Giants' way to beat Elements today. If they use that aggressive play style but make slightly less mistakes, they can build up a lead and beat Elements, because if it goes to mid to late, I think Elements is the stronger team.
At the same time, I think Elements will have learned from their mistakes, or not necessarily mistakes, but from their weak spots. It was pretty obvious in regard seeing how passive they were. I hope they kind of fix this, especially preparing for a team like Giants, when you know they're gonna come out swinging, and you know you probably have the edge on them later on in the mid to late game, because they yet again became a very 4-man defending Pepinero type of team, and I really want to see them break that mold.
Yeah, we'll see what they decide to go with. It's time to check in at the caster desk, and as we'll go, we'll hear from 80 carries from across the LCS on the return of the Queen of the Freljord in competitive play.